The Wes Penra Papers. A Journey Through the Multiverse. The First Level of Learning. http://wespenry.com. Present and Future Challenges, PFC, Section. PFC Paper Number 4, The Animus, Artificial Intelligence and Blank Slate Technology Part 3. By Wes Penra, Tuesday, June 14, 2011. 8. The Animus, in Search for Soul Carriers. Most people today have heard of artificial intelligence, robots, androids, thinking machines, etc. Most of it, I believe, took life with Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Terminator movies. No doubt that this was a hint to the public of what was to come. Not that any of this hadn't been mentioned before. We have Isaac Asimov's I, Robot and other profound revelations in the sci-fi genre. This is often how it's done. The truth is revealed to the public via fantasy and science fiction literature and movies. Someone with inside information writes an sci-fi book or a movie script to prepare us for the future. It stays in our subconscious mind, which does not differentiate between fiction and reality, as they are both one and the same, and then in the future, when what was relayed to us as entertainment becomes reality, it's easier for us to accept because we have a reference point when our subconscious mind gets triggered and carries the memories of the books/movies up to the surface. Today, the media is talking about artificial intelligence, AI, ever so often and predict our future as a machine society. Many scientists, both those who are for and against, to encourage a debate, come out in the open about it as well. No one can miss it because it's all over the place. On the other end of the spectrum, metaphysical beings, such as the Pleiadians, Bashar, the Ra Collective, and others, are consistently warning us from being part of that future. They stress that if we don't change our ways, we will be part of a society where intelligent machines rule, and once again we may go back to being openly enslaved from being covertly enslaved, like we are now. So what is this all about? Can it be something bigger than just man creating intelligent machines? The answer is a definite yes. We are being prepared. This is happening on different levels. Yes, man is using alien, and even Tesla technology, which is alien technology as well, to develop intelligent machines to do the work for us and be able to quickly do the math required for higher science. On a lower level, robots for common people are discussed as well, being used as housekeepers, janitors, and whatever they can be useful for. 8.1 The origin of the Animus. On the higher level, we are told, is the Animus. They are of central focus in the WMM, and a key problem, according to Dr. Neruda, Dr. A.R. Borden and Dr. E.M. Wines of LPGC number have showed concern about this alien race as well, so much that they released an essay to the public called, The Anima Problem, Possible Location of the Threat Locus. The two LPGC scientists agree with Dr. Neruda regarding the seriousness of this problem but disagree as of their origin. Dr. Neruda suggests that the anima come from a planet in a galaxy called the Whirlpool Galaxy, or MESI 51, M51, in the constellation Canes Venatici, about 25 million light-years away from Earth. M51 is a spiral galaxy, type SA, the Milky Way being an SB galaxy. These classifications are mostly about the size and form of the bulge in the center of the galaxy. However, I need to make an important note here. Although Sarah, who interviewed Dr. Neruda, suggested that the Animus home planet is located in M51 and Dr. Neruda is affirmative to this, I believe this to be either a typo, or more plausible, a deliberate mistake made by the Kortum, when they took over the WMM. In the first interview, it clearly states that the distance to their home galaxy is 37 million light-years. When asking LPGC about this inconsistency, they confirm that the distance should be about 37 million light-years, not 25 million, which is the distance to M51. LPGC suggest in their essay that the main choice of candidate for the Anima species is an elliptic galaxy, type E1, in the constellation of Leo. This suggested galaxy is called M105 or NGC 3379, depending on which galaxy classification model we use. M105 is on an approximate distance of 38 million light-years from our solar system. In LPGC's case, though, it is no more than a qualified suggestion at the point of the writing of the essay, 2007, and other galaxies, such as M96, M95, M66, M65, and NGC 3628, are also mentioned as candidates. What they have in common is that they all belong to the Leo group of galaxies, and their approximate distance from Earth is 35 to 38 million light-years. Who and what is correct or not remains to be seen, and outside the scope of this research paper. Also, ancient scriptures, now in the hands of LPGC, indicate a huge interest in the Leo constellation, hinting at this particular Animus problem, and by using ENS, remote viewing, LPGC has found signature of Animus presence in all the above-mentioned galaxies. This, in my opinion, is quite alarming, if correct, meaning that they have spread like cockroaches over our region of the universe. 8.2 Disconnected from source. It is described in the Neruda interviews that the Animus race is a highly artificial and machine-like species. This means that their intelligence is artificial as well, and their brains are no more than very sophisticated computers which can think intelligent thoughts on their own of a much higher accuracy and more precisely quality than we humans and many other species in the universe. As machines, they can regenerate themselves to a large degree, just like we exchange components in a machine or a computer to have it continue working. So, in our terms, one individual of this species can potentially live for millions and perhaps billions of years. But just like machines in general, they lack emotions and empathy, and thus can't understand how biological entities work. A body in this, and any known universe, needs to be biological in nature, and sophisticated enough to be able to be a soul carrier, i.e. possess a soul. A machine can have a certain level of consciousness, but that consciousness is totally disconnected from source because it lacks a soul. This is exactly the case with the Animus. If one of them dies, which is basically only possible if someone destroys it, or it gets involved in an accident from which it can't be regenerated, that's the end of it. That individual ceases to exist once and for all, there is no afterlife for such a being. The anima are apparently aware of their mortality in this sense, and their disconnection from some kind of higher consciousness and intelligence, and this bothers them. They want to reconstruct their bodies by adding DNA to them, thus hopefully being able to create soul carriers. This can only be done by collecting DNA from biokins throughout the universe, and subsequently, by infiltration and invasion. It is a mystery to me, though, how something which lacks a soul can have consciousness enough to long for one. It requires a soul to long for something. But then again, there is more to the picture, and part of the Animus problem may be disinformation to hide something just as hideous. Once again, although this, if true, is very threatening for us humans, it's a matter of imperatives. To understand this problem and be able to face it intellectually without preconceptions and belief system-based ideas, we have to eliminate the belief in good and evil, and instead think in imperatives. From our point of view, this alien AI is evil and counter-survival to our species, but from their viewpoint, it's evolution. They need to connect to source again. Unfortunately, at this point they are limited in their understanding of how biominds with information clouds think and work, and they don't grasp why it would be something wrong with terminating the intelligent beings of a whole planet if necessary. They don't have the luxury of emotions and feelings. It's from this perspective we need to face the problem. In our ancient past, around 12,800 years ago, they found our planet and noticed it was inhabited with biominds, humans. We were not evolved enough for their taste at the time, but decided to keep us under observation. Now, in 2011, they are coming back to put a probe in orbit around our planet to study our current stage of development. If they find us evolved enough, they will most probably invade, first by infiltration, and then by more direct means. We live in a free will universe, but it is also monitored by the central race and other essential beings from higher dimensions, and the Animus knows they need our approval to be able to take over. Same problem some other aliens have when trying to steal our DNA. They achieve this approval by tricking us by finding out what it is we want the most. In our case, from the standpoint of our military-industrial complex, Mike, it is technology, so by signing up for a TTP, they will get what they are after. Most likely, greedy factions of the human race, in position of power, will drool over the technology the anima have to offer. The problem, as it is presented, is not an easy one to solve, as we can see. This is why groups like the Labyrinth Group and LPGC are working behind the scenes in attempts to resolve it, out of scrutiny from the higher levels of our world governments. Here is where BST number, blank slate technology, comes into the picture as one potential solution to the Animus problem, as presented by the courtroom. I am not certain how the Animus became a machine race, if it was due to some catastrophe in the past, by choice, or if they were created by an external species, whom eventually left them to care for themselves. There are some indications, which I may go into more in the future, that the Verdants had a finger in this a long time ago, but more research needs to be done to know for sure. 9. Vertical time, blank slate technology, and memory restructure procedure. The information which has leaked out on these subjects come mainly from Dr. Neruda, but are also mentioned by Asha Yanadine from her communication with the Guardian Alliance, whom are said to be a benevolent, ancient race, also helping us out in the times that are and these to come. The Guardians, however, which we will go into later, are not very happy about what the Labyrinth Group is doing. Although they acknowledge the people on the ground, humans, as good people, doing what they're doing for reasons to help mankind, they are not in favor of the courtroom, whom they say have a very dark, service to self agenda which has everything to do with blank slate technology, BST. I will present both sides in this paper. 9.1 Horizontal and vertical time. To understand BST, we need to understand how vertical and horizontal time work. Here on Earth we live in the third dimension, or 4 space/time, if we use LPGC terms, where time is the fourth dimension. We normally experience time as being horizontal, with a past, present and a future. What most people don't realize is that we live hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands of lives in an expanding multiverse. This means that we are living several lifetimes at once here on Earth. Obviously, you are living one of the lifetimes now around 2012, and there's where your main attention is. Still, you may be living another life in the 1500s, other lives in the 800s, 100s, 500s BC, 50,000 BC, 5 million BC, and so on. We call this reincarnation, but that's not what it really is. Reincarnation implies that we die and are reborn again after a certain linear time has passed, always from a past into a future. In reality, seen from a multidimensional perspective, we live all our lives on Earth simultaneously, and the only reason we usually are not aware of our other selves is because they are separated by time. The important thing to know for now, there is so much more to it, is that we perceive time as horizontal. People in general are not even aware of what I just wrote in the above paragraph, and even less aware of that there is vertical time as well. There is a whole new complex science on concepts of time, which expands upon the mainstream concept of the same. This explains how 4 space/time in its expanded reality is actually 6 space/time, 3 spatial dimensions and 3 dimensions of time, namely, length, width, height, local/horizontal time, vertical time, and 5 infinites with 12,900,000 intervention points into horizontal time. However, the precise science of this is beyond what will be discussed in this paper, and we are only going to touch this briefly to be able to understand how BST works. From the perspective of horizontal time, when a major event is happening, e.g. the murder of JFK, the Hiroshima/Nagasaki A-bomb incidents, the first landing on the moon, 9/11s etc., it leaves a print on the horizontal timeline, which can be used as an intervention point of entrance from a vertical timeline. This can be done through remote viewing, and is done by remote viewers all the time, but so far, those who visit these entrance points can only do so as spectators and will not be able to change any events that happened in the past, or will happen, if the remote viewer is visiting the future. Thus, we can call this passive time travel, and it is very much possible and has been known to man for decades. BST, however, is active time travel, which means that events can be altered and interfered with, so that the future from the point of interaction will be different than it was before it was done. In other words, an alternative timeline is created. Again, the life physics around these concepts will not be discussed here. I have taken part of the physics that goes with it, and it is indeed not as incredible as it may sound, and after a little study, it makes sense. However, I am not ready to collaborate on it at this time and hope you will have patience with this and wait for the right time to post additional evidence to what is brought up here. The Animus, according to the Neruda interviews, first visited our planet about 300 million years ago and revisited us 8,866 years ago, approximately 2,000 years after the deluge. Mesopotamia had not yet started to flourish, and civilization was in the stage of rebuilding itself after the flood. Also, a lot of Anunnaki were still here, according to Sitchin. This was enough for the Animus to decide they should wait and see how we developed. The easiest way to explain vertical time is to think of an x and a y-axis, where the x-axis is horizontal time, and the y-axis being vertical time. Horizontal time is self-explanatory only because we are so used to perceiving time this way. Now, think of vertical time as each moment in existence stacked upon the next and all coinciding with one another. Thus, time is the composite of all moments of all experience simultaneously existing within no time, which can be referred to as eternity. Dr. Neruda explains it quite plainly in the interviews. Vertical time infers that one can select a moment of experience and use time and space as the portal through which they make their selection real. Once the selection is made, time and space become the continuity factor that changes vertical time into horizontal time or conventional time. And the difference between horizontal and vertical time is that vertical time has to do with the simultaneous experience of all time, and horizontal time has to do with the continuity of time in linear, moment-by-moment experiences. Remote viewing, or ENS, which is its more advanced form where you use an avatar, is of course nothing we have invented here on Earth. It's a universal technique, used by most advanced aliens in order both to time travel and to move quickly from one place to another. By the same token, BST is not originating as an idea in the heads of the Quantum or 15, either. Variants of this technique exist elsewhere in the universe, but 15's technique is a quite unique form of BST. However, few alien species are willing to share their specific techniques with other races once they have developed them. According to Dr. Neruda, it's one of the most protected and guarded of all technologies. This is the reason why the Quantum can't go visit some alien species somewhere and get the key how to master BST. Dr. Neruda, whom after all is a defector from the Labyrinth group, is further telling us that in order to develop the specific kind of BST 15 is working on, it requires a developer to apply new theorems and new laws of physics which have not been developed before. Then a new suite of technologies need to be built, based on a new matrix of how the world works. Almost everything we previously held true needs to be destroyed, reinvented, reformulated, and integrated into this new matrix. This is why the Labyrinth Group and LPGC are not on collision course with each other. They are both developing a new life physics, but slightly different from each other's. They are not working together on any level, LPGC being a totally separate unit, not part of any government bodies, while the Labyrinth Group is connected with, and part of ACIO. There are more reasons why the two are not working together, probably more reasons than I am aware of, but to understand it better we need to know exactly why Dr. Neruda defected. I have already given a reason or two, but later on in this paper, I will bring it up some more. 9.2 Memory Restructure Procedure, MRP. The Wingmaker's sites can in certain terms be viewed as time capsules, as described in the WMM. They are programmed to be activated at a certain time to counter the Animus invasion and ultimately to protect the DNA of the central race, whom I prefer to call the founders. However, as long as we are talking about the wing makers, the Quartum and the Labyrinth group, I'll use their terminology. Built into these time capsules is a memory restructure procedure, or MRP number, which is intended to be used to wipe out the memory of the artificial race and thus prevent the invasion to take place. The Labyrinth group, or more specifically 15, has, as it appears, been able to understand this technology well enough to be able to use it on his own people, in case they defect or start to talk. Any specific type of memory, or any specific event, can be erased from the memory bank and the victim won't ever suspect that something is wrong. One can argue that a similar technology is used towards alien abductees to create missing time, although the latter technology seems less perfect. Another similar technique is used on military special forces, who are part of special teams who meet with aliens, take part of top secret technologies, visit secret facilities on Earth and elsewhere in the universe. Yes, it happens. Once they depart from their mission, the military is using a blank slate memory erasure program, which will wipe out the memory of the soldier so he can't talk about his experiences. Dr. Neruda, however, still has his memory intact from the time he spent with the Labyrinth group and the ACIO, and he thinks the reason why they didn't come after him was because he had already revealed too much, and instead of making the effort they simply took over the Wingmaker's site. 15 didn't think that MRP, attached with the time capsules, is enough to stop the Animus, and this is the main reason he thinks BST is necessary. So let's take a look at what it is and how it's intended by humans to be used on the Anima. 9.3 Using BST against the Animus. First, let us take another look at what blank slate technology is. We already discussed how a time traveler can be either passive or active, or both. ACIO, the CIA, and other government bodies know very well how to remote view and how to time travel, but only in passive form, as spectators. BST, on the other hand, is the technology necessary to interact with vertical time and change it. You have to be able to page through it like a book, to quote Dr. Neruda, until you find the exact intervention point where you want to intervene. This is where it gets scary, because it's so complex, and if you intervene with vertical time, you also intervene with horizontal time. So if you even think about doing something like that, you have to be able to calculate the exact consequences of that intervention. This is why 15 and the Labyrinth group decided to cooperate with the Quartum. Their computer technology is about 4,000 times as powerful than our best supercomputers. Still, it has taken a super genius like 15 more than half a century to pinpoint this down to a workable technique, and I'm not sure if he's done yet. With the help from Quartum technology, the Labyrinth group is able to create highly complex scenario models. These models then helps the group figure out the best intervention point. BST is a composite technology having 5 discrete and interrelated technologies. I'll let Dr. Neruda describe them, one by one. The emphasis is mine for better overview. The first technology is a specialized form of remote viewing. This is the technology that enables a trained operative to mentally move into vertical time and observe events and even listen to conversations related to an inquiry mode. The operative is invisible to all people within the time they are traveling to, so it's perfectly safe and unobtrusive. The intelligence gained from this technology is used to determine the application of the other 4 technologies. This is the equivalent of intelligence gathering. The second technology that is key to BST is the equivalent of a memory implant. As I mentioned earlier, the ACIO refers to this technology as a memory restructure procedure or MRP. MRP is the technology that allows a memory to be precisely eliminated in the horizontal time sequence and a new memory inserted in its place. The new memory is welded to the existing memory structure of the recipient. You see, events small and large occur from a single thought, which becomes a persistent memory, which in turn, becomes a causal energy center that leads the development and materialization of the thought into reality. Into horizontal time. MRP can remove the initial thought and thereby eliminate the persistent memory that causes events to occur. The third technology consists of defining the intervention point. In every major decision, there are hundreds, if not thousands of intervention points in horizontal time as a thought unfolds and moves through its development phase. However, in vertical time, there is only one intervention point, or what we sometimes call the causal seed. In other words, if you can access vertical time intelligence, you can identify the intervention point that is the causal seed. This technology identifies the most probable intervention points and ranks their priority. It enables focus of the remaining technologies. The fourth technology is related to the third. It's the scenario modeling technology. This technology helps to assess the various intervention points as to their least invasive ripple effects to the recipients. In other words, which intervention point, if applied to a scenario model, produces the desired outcome with the least disruption to unrelated events. The scenario modeling technology is a key element of BST because without it, BST could cause significant disruption to a society or entire species. The fifth and most puzzling technology is the interactive time travel technology. The Labyrinth Group has the first four technologies in a ready state, waiting for the interactive time travel technology to become operational. This technology requires an operative, or a team of operatives, to be able to physically move into vertical time and be inserted in the precise space and time where the optimal intervention point has been determined. From there, the operatives must perform a successful MRP and return to their original time in order to validate mission success. At the time Dr. Nehru thought affected, the Labyrinth Group had about 40 scenario models and around 8 intervention points defined. In the interviews with Sarah, Dr. Neruda is too uncomfortable giving out the most likely scenario because of the highly classified nature of the information. It's also a matter of not only national security, but in this case, world security. Dr. Neruda, just like the Pleiadians, lets us know that Earth is a very special planet due to its tremendous biodiversity and a complex range of ecosystems. Its natural resources are very unique and plentiful. Dr. Neruda says, it's a genetic library that's the equivalent of a galactic zoo. This directly corresponds with the Pleiadians saying that Earth is a living library where plants, animals, and human DNA are seeded by using DNA from multiple different planets within, and outside, of our galaxy. The Animus showed interest in this planet because it wants to own its genetics in full, not only our human biokind. The Animus is a synthetic race, as we've discussed earlier, and they have the ability to clone themselves to whatever extent they think necessary. No birth control needed, as sex is not a part of their life, or should I say existence. The only birth control they want is to determine how many copies of themselves they need. Although expansion of their empire is one imperative, they mainly want to become soul carriers. Synthetic organisms are not able to carry the higher frequencies of a soul, which always requires an organic nervous system. So, in other words, the Animus race wants to become immortal, and the only way to do so is to connect with Source via souls/information clouds. In summary, what the Labyrinth Group is trying to do is to catch the first thought from the Animus, where they decided to invade Earth and redirect that thought through an intervention point in vertical time. When the most well-suited intervention point is found and decided upon, people using the advanced avatar-based remote viewing technology, will use BST, creating a blank memory slate of the whole race at the moment of the exact thought, and then insert a new thought, perhaps saying something to the effect, Earth is not a good planet for us, let's move elsewhere and never come back. This, in spite of how dangerous it sounds, is the plan in a nutshell. So why not just trust the Wingmakers/Central race to have installed defensive weapons good enough to keep the Animus away? This was exactly the point Dr. Neruda made in a session with 15. 15, however, doesn't trust the Central race in this respect. Through RV sessions, his group of Ents have discovered Animus activity in many galaxies, even as near as the Andromeda, which is our closest neighbor galaxy, aside from the Magellan Clouds. Did they invade all these planets despite precautions made by the Central race? If so, what stops them from invading us? These were the questions 15 asked himself. Instead of waiting to see what will happen once they have found all the 7 Wingmakers sites, he decided to develop BST to eliminate the threat once and for all. After had RVD the central race back in time when they were about to create Earth, 15 knew that they would never allow 15 to develop and use BST against the Animus or for any other reasons either, for that matter, BST being the most guarded technology, once developed by the central race. 15 is aware of that BST can be used both for benevolent purposes and for evil, and this is exactly the reason why the central race don't want anyone to have access to it without their direct permission. The risk that this technology falls into the wrong hands are great. And of course, there are organizations, like SAALM, who are doing all they can to try and infiltrate both LPGC and the Labyrinth Group, both working on developing BST, separate from each other. In addition, the remote viewers, such as Samantha, are not part of the Labyrinth Group, and in cases as such when she remote viewed the central race, 15 afterwards authorized his staff. In most cases Dr. Neruda provided the correct coordinates so they knew where to erase, to use MRP number on the remote viewer, so she would forget everything that had to do with the end sessions. This, naturally, kept both Dr. Neruda and other Labyrinth Group member in constant anxiety of having their memory erased. That's a lot of power assigned to 15. I am certainly glad that I am not in the position Dr. Neruda and others were, and those who have stayed within the group still are. I get the impression that 15 is jumping the gun because things are taking longer than he feels comfortable with, but it was no accident that the ancient arrow site in New Mexico was found, and our DNA seems to be programmed to find these sites when the time is right. Thus, to me it seems logical to wait it out. Still, I can see 15's concern when he finds out how widespread this synthetic race is, this being the main reason why he wants to bypass the Wingmaker's technology and develop his own version of BST. And of course, in the middle of this is the ignorant human race. Now, however, the cat is out of the bag, but if Dr. Neruda hadn't defected, it's doubtful that anyone outside the Labyrinth Group would know anything about this. Speaking of knowing and of memory, it's known and acknowledged that Marduk rewrote history and erased our memories once upon a time and started a brand new era, where humans had no knowledge of any previous gods. Instead he implanted new, false memories of Earth's history. Whether he used the same blank slate technology that the Labyrinth Group and LPGC now is developing or not, is more than I can tell, but this all makes me wonder how many times in the past the Anunnaki have erased the memory of the human population. How many times in the wars of the gods have they wished for their human slaves to remember a new history, a new made-up past? Alien contacts say that the Vegans, Lyrans, and the Pleiadians are here to set the record straight and give us our real history back, and that is exactly what I see and hear them doing. The fallen ones are losing this battle, at least against some of us, because we refuse to fight with weaponry anymore, we simply leave them behind and pass them on our spiritual path. To where we are going the gods can't go, because they don't know how. Perhaps in the future, it will be our task to help them evolve, if possible. 10. Asha Yanadine, the Guardian Alliance, and the Beast. The most outspoken opponent to blank slate technology and the Kortum is perhaps the alien Guardian Alliance, communicating through their spokesperson, Asha Yanadine, former Anna Hayes, co-founder of Azurite Press of the Melchizedek Cloister Emerald Order. In May of 2010, she was interviewed by Carrie Lynn Cassidy of Project Camelot Productions, where Mrs. Dean through the approximately 7 hours interview went through the teachings of the Guardians. In the third section of the interview, she and Carrie are getting on the subject of the Wingmakers, and Mrs. Dean, to Carrie's surprise, is talking about them in quite a negative manner. In essence, she says that the Kortum, whom in the Guardians' opinion are running the show, are playing both sides by helping, and taking help from the Labyrinth Group to develop BST in a secret mission to erase the memory of the human race, not the Animus. She further refers to her books, Voyagers I and II, which are talking more in detail about the Wingmakers, the Kortum, and issues related to them. Carrie, who interviewed James/Mahunahi of the Wingmakers/Kortum in 2008, and seems to have a relatively positive attitude towards them, was confused when Mrs. Dean corrected her on the subject. Mrs. Dean is continuing, saying that the people on the ground, meaning the humans who found the ancient arrow site in New Mexico are not bad guys, it's the Cortum who are tricking everybody. During the interview she is in contact with the Guardians, metaphysically, and they confirm that what she is saying is true. 10.1 The makers of wings and other things. During the last part of the interview, Mrs. Dean says that the ancient arrow sites are actually owned by the Guardians, and not by the wing makers. Furthermore, she claims that there are not 7 sites, but 12, with an additional 24 sub-sites, the 12 system again, something she is not explaining in any more details than that. It also so happened, that the Melchizedek Cloister Emerald Order was going to hold a workshop just a few days after Carrie's interview, discussing, among other things, the wing makers issue, or as the Guardian Alliance apparently call them, the makers of wings and other things. Although some of their information is free online, Mrs. Dean is charging for those who want to attend the seminars, so I don't know the details of what was discussed there. If you, the reader, knows, please email me for details. http://wesbenry.com/contact.htm right parenthesis. She is, however, selling the context of the workshops after the fact on her website, http://www.azuritpress.com/products_us/woab.php, but to a pretty high price, which I am not ready to pay at this time. By following the latter URL, you can at least read some of what was discussed in the workshop, all emphases in original. This workshop marked the official beginning of the step-down program with the first Camelot Project interview and the beginning of the end of the Wing Makers' Cortum invasion agenda via the 7 broken ancient arrow sites. Following the 7.5-hour Camelot interview, the speakers were ready to deliver some wonderful information about the 12 primary ancient Ilahe Aquari arrow sites, Guardian sites also called the Silver Seed Gates and created by the Christic Ilahe Elohim and Aquari races, their secondary sites, 24 in total, and how they hold the keys for the mirror ball activations, involves Earth's coronosphere layers. The mirror ball activations initiate in the encryption lattice, L, of our anatomy, so there was detailed information given on the natural living current flows between the atomic, spirit, body, the light body, the L, and where the Metatronic net fields exist within these layers. These activations will allow us to progressively clear the net implants. We started to clear the D6, D5 and Density 1 levels at this workshop, and the D3, D2 and D1 levels will be starting to clear during subsequent sliders workshops, which will in turn, allow us to progressively anchor the crystal spiral and time wave. By December 21, 2012, the Christics are aiming to have transformed these mirror ball activations into the full mirror in the sky, which will provide the strength we need at this time to fully deflect the Metatronic 55 activation. Interesting also is to read Mark Hempel's and Mahunahi's reaction to Mrs. Dean's statements about the wing makers she made in the Carrie Lynn Cassidy interview. Shortly after the videos had been uploaded to the internet, Mark Hempel sent a very threatening email to Carrie, saying that Mrs. Dean is wrong and is misleading her listeners by spreading misinformation about the wing makers. He makes sure to Carrie that he and James are not taking this lightly and are ready to sue both Project Camelot Productions and Asha Yana Dean if the misinformation of this specific information is not edited out from the video. Carrie got pretty shaken up by this, I can imagine, especially as she and Bill Ryan, her former interview partner, had just split up due to indifferences. Carrie probably felt quite vulnerable and alone, because Project Camelot Productions was her new project, now working pretty much on her own. James/Mahunahi then sent an email himself to Carrie in form of an open letter to Mrs. Dean, emphasizing that the names in the wing maker's story are not real names, and the Cortum was a fictional name, so how can the Guardians use these terms as if they were real? He soothed down the energies a bit with his email and asked Mrs. Dean to consider a cooperation with him rather than opposing him, but the underlying seriousness in this matter was present throughout his email. Mrs. Dean responded, and this whole conversation back and forth is posted underneath the videos on the Camelot Productions page. For a while, Carrie considered following Hempel's advice to edit out the section of the interview in question, so she removed them for a while, but then seems to have made some kind of agreement with all parties that the video could remain in unedited form if the correspondence back and forth was included on the page. I find it quite interesting, though, that Hempel reacted like he did and was supported in this by Mahu. What they are suggesting, both of them, is pure censorship. That goes against the teachings of the James who is presenting himself on his websites, so this was apparently a hot potato for one reason or another. I have reasons to return to Asha Yanadine in additional papers. I have read both of her books, Voyagers I and II, and I find her information both extremely interesting and consistent. She and the Guardian Alliance, with their tremendous wealth of information, have helped me a lot in my own research. I used to be skeptic of her and her sources before I actually read the books. My attitude changed 180 degrees. Note: as I am editing my papers before publishing, I get a note from A.R. Borden saying that a good friend of his told him that she'd heard that Asha Yanadine could be in trouble because she knows too much. And for you who are unfamiliar with her work, I'll tell you, she is blasting the Anunnaki big time, and the Wingmakers people and the Kortum as well. By and large, I tend to agree with her. Borden, at this time, knew nothing about that I am writing about Asha Yanadine in this, and other papers. He did not read any of them before they were released.